What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video here. There's been a lot of noise, a lot of back and forth between fighters as of recent, via social media. So, I'm gonna go ahead and get my take on that. The first pair of fighters that have had their share of thoughts or their share of expressions towards each other's career thus far. We have in the 154-pound division, Xander Zayas versus Vergil Ortiz. They've traded words on via Twitter, if I'm not mistaken, or via social media, regarding each other's career, each other's resume. They've both been throwing hard bombs towards one another. I don't keep up with social media on that platform as much, but I was able to see via screenshots or via captures that people were posting on other platforms such as Instagram, especially reporters regarding the back and forth between Xander Zayas and Vergil Ortiz, regarding each other's resume, each other's accomplishments, and it's getting intense. It's getting intense. The heat is rising between the fighters, between the competitors, and like I mentioned in the past video, I think it's time for these fights to happen. Xander Zayas recently just won his world title, and Vergil Ortiz has been fighting at the top for the last couple of fights. Ever since he won the interim title versus Sergey Boachik, if I'm not mistaken, that's how you pronounce the name, and then just recently the title defense against Madrimov. So I mentioned that it's time for Vergil Ortiz to hit a shot at a full world title, whether it's against Zayas, whether it's against Fundora for the full world title, or whether it's against Bakram, the IBF champion. And it seems that we might head to that direction, where we might see Xander Zayas versus Vergil Ortiz in the near future. In my opinion, or what I have heard at least in the last couple of days, or maybe the last couple of weeks, maybe a month at most too, was that Vergil Ortiz was in negotiations to rematch Boachik. The fighter that he beat to secure the interim WBC title. So I heard or I read better said that there was negotiations for the rematch to take place. I'm not sure how close they are to getting that deal signed or to getting that deal made. If it does take place, I do see the Xander Zayas making a title defense, whether it's against a ranked fighter, maybe a mandatory, before seeing him fight against Vergil Ortiz or against Fundora for a unification. So I think the fight is gonna marinate. I think this is good. This is a good build-up or a good start to a build-up between Vergil Ortiz and Xander Zayas. It can be another classic, Puerto Rico versus Mexico. Although Vergil Ortiz is born in the USA, maybe second generation American, but he does take great pride in his Mexican roots. So I think it makes up for another classic between Puerto Rico versus Mexico. Another I don't think is of the magnitude of De La Hoya versus Trinidad. Given the fact that De La Hoya was a superstar, pay-per-view star by that time that he fought Felix, and Vergil Ortiz, if I'm being honest, he's not quite there just yet. Let's be real here. He's a good fighter. He's a tremendous fighter. He's entertaining. He's exciting. People like watching him fight, including myself. But if we're being real with one another, if we're being honest, he does not carry that superstardom just yet that Oscar De La Hoya did when he fought Felix Trinidad. So I don't think the fight's gonna build up to that magnitude, but it's gonna be big enough to the point where they're gonna fill out the arena, or the arena's gonna be packed. They're gonna sell out tickets, and the world is gonna tune in. The hardcore fans are gonna tune in to watch Vergil Ortiz versus Xander Zayas. Like I mentioned, I do think, or at least I read, like I mentioned, that Vergil Ortiz was negotiating to rematch Boachik if that takes place, which I think it might take place. Like I said, I'm not sure how close they are to getting that deal finalized, but I do see the fight happening next year, maybe late next year, because in my opinion, I do think the Top Rank and Zayas' management, they're gonna have him, make a title defense, maybe two, before the Vergil Ortiz fight, and like I said, maybe even a unification with Fundora before the Vergil Ortiz fight takes place. So I do see the fight taking place, but maybe not the next fight for both fighters. I do see them fighting maybe like one or two oppositions before they compete against one another. So that's my take on that. But like I said, it's heating up now. It's heating up. The division is making noise again. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a good way to start. Getting the big fights made at 154 once again. And now the next pair of fighters, we have Teófimo Lopez versus Shakur Stevenson. They've also been going back and forth. I do know that they both grew up around each other in the amateurs. Both Olympians. Shakur representing the U.S. and Teófimo representing the birth nation or the birth country of his parents in Honduras. So both carry great amateur pedigree. Given the fact that both are Olympians in the same year, actually, or in the same time. In 2016, they both were Olympians, and they both have had successful careers. They both have had off nights where they don't perform the best, but they come back against top level opposition and perform amazing, give out amazing performances. Teófimo Lopez showed it against Josh Taylor, against Arnold Barboza, against Lomachenko, even against Richard Comey. Teófimo Lopez was coming off of a decision win when before that he was stopping everybody. Getting knockout after knockout on spectacular fashion. Then he fights Nakatani and gets a decision victory, and a lot of people criticize him for not, or due to him not getting another knockout victory on that fight or on that night. But then he comes for the world title and knocks out Comey in 2 rounds. Beats him in spectacular fashion. So they both have had those nights where they get criticized quite a lot by the public and by the fans. So it's a great matchup. It's a great matchup. But like I said, Teófimo has had a solid names on his resume. Lomachenko, Comey, Josh Taylor, who was an undisputed champion and undefeated at that time when he lost to Teófimo, and Teófimo became a 2-division world champion. Arnold Barboza, who was under the radar. He was being overlooked by a lot of champions and a lot of fighters. A lot of fighters did not want to give him an opportunity for the title. Who knows why? Politics, business got in the way, but Teófimo stepped up and gave him a title shot and outclassed him. Made it look easy. Made it look that he's levels above him. So that's on Teófimo's side, and on Shakur, same thing. He's been criticized a lot for the De Los Santos fight. A lot of people criticize him for the Nakatila fight back when he was fighting at 130. But after the Nakatila fight, he came back and he beat Jamel Herring in spectacular fashion, stopped him, and Oscar Valdez completely dominated him. After the De Los Santos fight, he comes back and he gets a victory against Josh Padley and against some other fighter that I cannot pronounce his name, even if my life depended on it. I'm not even going to try. But you guys know who I'm talking about. And then he comes back and he goes toe-to-toe with the punching machine and William Cepeda and pitches a shutout. Although like I mentioned in the video where I did my review on that fight, I do think the scorecards were a little harsh on Cepeda. Giving a judge only gave him 1 round. I do think that he won maybe 4, but other than that, Shakur completely dominated the fight, 8-4 in my opinion. And Shakur pitched a shutout. He shut a lot of mouths that night. He basically quieted down a lot of critiques. Those who said that he wasn't about it, that he wasn't a dog, that he was just a runner, this, that, and the third. And he turned those non-believers into believers. So both fighters, like I said, have had harsh nights, and they both have been criticized, but both have performed. When it comes to fighting bigger opposition, they have performed at the top-notch level, and they've performed in spectacular fashion. It's like saying when the bar rises, they perform. The tougher the opposition, the better the performance will be. And that's the case with a lot of fighters. It could be the fact that they may not be as hungry, given the fact that they're not getting the big fights, but when they do, they perform. No, I don't think that fight gets made next. I think it's a good way to build up that fight. I do think they will fight in the near future, maybe in 2 years, and I'm gonna explain why. I do think that Teófimo Lopez is gonna take the route to unify the 140-pound division, whether it's against Richard Say Hitchens, whether it's against Uriel Matias, or whether it's against Gary Russell. So I do think he's gonna take that route. In my opinion, I think that he unifies against Richard Say Hitchens, given the fact that they're both from New York, and it's a fight that's gonna take place in New York, and it's gonna do great numbers. In my opinion, it's gonna sell out. It's gonna be a New York battle. So I do think Teófimo Lopez takes that route before Shakur Stevenson fight. I do think that he's going to try to unify the 140-pound division. I think he gets it done after the Hitchens fight, given the fact that everything goes well. He's probably going to try to unify it against Matias. And after that, Shakur might move up to 140. If Teófimo Lopez decides to stick around a little longer in that weight division, we might see the Shakur versus Teófimo Lopez fight then. So I think the fight will take place in maybe the next the soonest maybe a year and a half, but for sure within the next 2 years. I don't think it takes place in 2026, maybe early 2027, because I do think Teófimo Lopez is gonna have back-to-back unification matches, and then the Shakur Stevenson fight in early 2027, my opinion. And as for Shakur goes, I do see him unifying the 135-pound division. What's his name? We have Abdullah Mason fighting Sam Notes. I believe that's the last name of the opponent for the vacant WBO title. I don't think he's gonna go that route because I do believe that Abdullah Mason's management is smart enough to realize that he's still on the come up. He's still young, so I don't think they're gonna throw him into the Sharks just yet. And if that was the case, I do think it's gonna be another Fernando Vargas career where they're gonna throw him into the Lions so soon, and that his career might be shortened. So I don't think Top Rank and his management are gonna allow Abdullah to take that route just yet. I think that they're gonna give him a couple title defenses, maybe against Edwin De Los Santos, William Cepeda. Let's say if Navarrete decides to move up to 135 again from the 130 division. So I don't think the unification with Abdullah takes place. I do think that the unification that Shakur might look the route to take is gonna be the IBF route. Raymond Murataya, he's currently the IBF champion. The IBF is the strictest sanctioning body, if that. And I heard that there was I read, better said, that there was a they had a couple of days, if I'm not mistaken, it was 60 or 90 days that they had to come to an agreement to fight Andy Cruz. And if for some reason they couldn't come to an agreement, they would go to purse bid. I'm not sure if they're gonna pay Andy Cruz step aside money to get the unification with Shakur. If Raymond Murataya decides to make his mandatory title defense against Andy Cruz, I do think the Shakur fight will take place early next year, maybe around April. If the Murataya fight, or if the Murataya versus Andy Cruz fight does not take place, I do see Shakur unifying against Raymond late this year. My opinion, I do see that happening, because at one point Murataya was already the mandatory for the WBC. For some reason, the fight did not take place. Negotiations fell apart. So Murataya went the IBF route, secured the interim title against Abdulaev. Lomachenko retired, and he got elevated to full champion. Shakur would go and make the title defense against Padley and then William Cepeda. So if that fight was already close to being done, or if it was close to being done, it didn't happen like I mentioned. So now that both hold world titles, I do see the fight being made even easier, given the fact that there's a higher reward for the risk that Shakur will take. Maybe at that point in time, it was kind of like a high risk, no reward. I haven't seen too much of Raymond Murataya. I've heard good things about him. I'm actually gonna go ahead and check out his fights. If I'm being honest with y'all, I haven't seen Murataya fight. I've heard great things about him, that he's a threat to the division, and I wanna see for myself. So I do think Shakur takes that route. I do think that he unifies the 135-pound division. Maybe the WBA title becomes available. I'm not sure if Lamont Roach is gonna stick around at 135 and vacate the title at 130. If he does decide to do that, he might fight for the vacant WBA title. If Tank decides to vacate, Tank currently has personal issues that he's dealing with. I'm not sure if he's gonna retire from boxing. I've seen on other sources, like on social media, that other reporters, other trainers, or even other fanatics, that they've uploaded, or they've mentioned that Tank is retiring, that he's hanging up the gloves. I'm not sure if that's the case. If it is, the WBA title might become vacant. The number 1 and the number 2 ranked fighters might fight for it, and that's another unification that can take place at the 135-pound division for Shakur. So, or maybe even Shakur rematches Edwin De Los Santos. That's what I wanted to mention too. If Raymond Murataya decides to take the IBF mandatory route to defend against Andy Cruz, there's a high chance that Shakur might rematch De Los Santos, and then the Raymond Murataya with Shakur unification takes place next year. If Raymond decides to take if Raymond decides to take that route to defend against his mandatory, then I do see Shakur taking another fight during that meantime. And if not, I see the unification taking place. Like I said, the Shakur versus Teófimo fight, it's a good way to start the build-up, going back and forth on social media. But I don't see that fight happening just next. I don't. And a little hint was the fact that Teófimo Teófimo tweeted actually that he basically I'm not sure if it was a poll, but it was kind of like an option whether he would either fight Richardson Hitchens or Shakur Stevenson. He kind of left it up to the fans for them to decide which fight Teófimo should take place. So that should be a little hint. That should be a little hint that y'all should take, that the Shakur Stevenson might not take place. So, or might not take place next. So that's my opinion on that. That's my take. Like I said, it's there's a lot of noise currently right now going back and forth between fighters. Big fights that can be made and will be made. But like I said, there's other fights that both fighters or all four fighters that I mentioned here, or that the video is mainly about, that they're gonna take. You know, I do see Shakur unifying the 135 pound division. I see Teófimo unifying the 140 before Shakur and Teófimo fight. And I do see Zayas making at least 1 or 2 title defenses before fighting Vergil Ortiz. And Vergil Ortiz, again, I do see him, if the negotiations follow through, I do see him rematching Belichick and then maybe getting a title shot against Bakram. So that's my take on that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I wanted to go ahead and leave my thought out there, my expressions, simply because, you know, there's a lot of noise going back and forth, and these are the fights that need to be made. If we want to see if we want boxing to return back to its golden days where we have the best fight, we need to see these fights. We need to see these unifications. We need to see these fighters move up in weight like Shakur and test themselves against the top dogs in the next weight class. These are the fights that we need to see, and they have to get made. So that was it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I have more content coming for y'all, so stay tuned. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. All right, peace out.